When Emma first said it, I honestly thought she was kidding. We were sitting across from each other at the dinner table, the candles between us burning low, the kind of night I'd hoped would help us reconnect after weeks of strain. I reached out for her hand, craving closeness, but she pulled away with a faint sigh. Then she looked me directly in the eye and said, "Once a month is enough, John. That's all I need." Her words landed harder than I let show. Once a month. That's what our marriage had been reduced to for her. A ration, as though intimacy was some bill she grudgingly paid. I nodded at the time, pretending I understood, but inside something cracked. A husband shouldn't feel like he has to beg for affection. In the weeks that followed, I tested her words, waiting silently to see if she would notice the gap she'd created. I kept my distance. I stopped leaning in for a goodbye kiss before work. When she dressed up for nights out with friends, I didn't compliment her. I became exactly what she said she wanted, a man who only showed up once a month. At first, Emma didn't notice. She was busy with brunches, fitness classes, and long phone calls with her sister that made her laugh like a teenager. But as time passed, something shifted. She started asking why I was so quiet, why I didn't reach for her in bed, why I stayed late at the office instead of coming home. "Is something wrong, John?" she asked one night, her voice unsure. I almost laughed at the irony. Wrong? Everything was wrong. But I reminded myself I was only following her rules. She wanted intimacy once a month, fine. Then my presence, my effort, my care would also arrive once a month. The first time I packed a bag and stayed with my brother for a week, Emma went pale when I returned. She didn't ask questions, just watched me unpack. The second time she finally broke. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. I looked at her, bitterness heavy in my chest. "I'm only giving you what you said you wanted." Her lips parted in shock, as if she hadn't expected her own words to be thrown back at her so clearly. At first, she tried to laugh it off, acting like I was being dramatic. "John, come on, you know I didn't mean it like that," she said with a forced smile. But her nervous eyes betrayed her fear. I leaned back, arms folded. "You said once a month was enough. I'm respecting that. I didn't realize you'd be upset when I matched your effort." That shut her up. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her hands twisting in her lap. For years, I had been the one chasing her attention, planning date nights, reminding her that marriage was more than just living under the same roof. But now, by following her rules to the letter, I had turned the mirror back on her. Weeks stretched into months, and our home grew colder. Emma started lingering near me, giving half-hearted hugs, finding excuses to sit beside me on the couch. It was almost pathetic. One night, when she touched my arm and whispered, "I miss us," I simply answered, "I'll see you on the 15th, as though we were scheduling an appointment. The color drained from her face. "That's cruel," she whispered. "Cruel," I repeated, my voice calm but firm. "Cruel is a wife treating intimacy like a chore. Cruel is a husband feeling unwanted in his own house. I didn't make these rules, Emma, you did." For the first time, she had no comeback. The balance of power had shifted. She was the one waiting, hoping, longing, while I remained distant and unyielding. I could see her frustration growing in the way she lingered in doorways, tried to start conversations that fizzled into silence. One Saturday morning, she finally confronted me. "John, this isn't working. I can't stand this distance." I looked at her, really looked, and realized how much of our marriage had depended on me overcompensating for her lack of effort. And now, the only reason she was reaching for me was because she was afraid of losing control. "This," I said quietly, "is exactly what I've lived with for years. Now you know how it feels." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost softened. But the memory of lonely nights, of being dismissed with a shrug when I needed her most, kept me steady. Emma had taught me how to live without closeness. Now it was her turn to learn, one painful day at a time. The tension between us became unbearable. Meals were eaten in silence. Conversations reduced to grocery lists, bills, and schedules. What had once been a home now felt like a boarding house for two strangers. She tried to bridge the gap, making my favorite coffee in the mornings, placing her hand on mine at dinner, dressing up without occasion. But my responses stayed measured, detached, almost transactional. One night, as I headed to bed, she blocked the doorway. "John, please," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I don't want this. I don't want us to be like this." I studied her, the woman I had once adored. "Then why," I asked evenly, "did you set the bar so low? You told me once a month was fine. That's what you thought I deserved." Her lips pressed tight, eyes brimming. "I didn't realize what I was doing to you. I thought you'd always try, no matter what." That confession stung deeper than rejection. "So you expected me to carry everything? The affection, the effort, the pursuit, all of it." I shook my head. "That's not marriage, Emma. That's servitude." Her tears spilled freely now. "I took you for granted," she whispered. The words lingered heavy in the air, but they did little to melt the ice I'd built around my heart. For years, I had longed for her affection, only to be dismissed with excuses and half-hearted gestures. And now, standing before me, she was the one begging for scraps of love, and I couldn't bring myself to give them. As the weeks went on, the cracks widened. Friends began to notice. At gatherings, Emma clung to me, laughed too loudly, touched my arm as if to prove something. But behind closed doors, her frustration boiled. "You're punishing me," she accused one evening. "I'm showing you what our marriage has felt like through my eyes," I answered calmly. "If that feels like punishment, maybe you should ask yourself why." She stared at me, speechless, her face pale under the weight of realization. In that moment, she finally understood. I was no longer the desperate husband begging for scraps of love. I had become a man unwilling to settle for half a marriage, and that terrified her, because the indifference she had taught me might be the very thing that ended us for good.